I want to wish you all a good evening. My name's Gloria Wilson, and I thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Main Road Corridor, what Rational Roads has been accomplishing, and what we hope to accomplish with your help. So on behalf of the steering committee, I welcome you to this informational session, and I want to remind you all to please remain muted until we come to questions later on in the program. But without further ado, I will introduce you to John Slugger, and now he will take it away.
Thank you, Gloria. Relative to muting, yes, keep yourself muted, but as we go through here, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask the question. You don't have to wait until the very end. So I'm going to bring up a presentation here. Let's see here. So hopefully all of you should see this. So welcome. And the topic really is the Main Road Corridor project that the county is working on. But there's a lot of background associated with this. So we're going to go through some things. And like I said, at any point in time, if you've got questions, feel free to just jump in and ask them. The Main Road segment, the Main Road Corridor is segmented into 3 segments. The segment A, which is currently being worked on. And then there's B and C, and what the county is effectively looking at is segment C down here. But one of the key takeaways in the whole presentation here is the worst safety and congestion issues we have are in that area, which are actually between segment B and C. So part of our dilemma is working with the county, trying to convince them that they really need to be looking at this whole segment B and C holistically. So we're going to go over some of the project information, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is context-based design. So we'll talk about that, talk about what we've been up to, and then also alternative 6, and then finally Q&A. Really, our overall objective, though, is to try to get more and more folks involved, like you, engaged in what we're trying to do and to support the efforts. And it's really critical because what we're going to be talking about is a lot of technical information, but at the end of the day, it's a political decision, and we really need you all to help us engage with the county council as part of that activity. So in terms of what's happening with the Main Road Corridor, you always got to start with a budget. Is there money? Where's the money coming from, and so forth. And it turns out, if you were here at the point in time in 2016, we all voted for a 0.5-cent sales tax. And in 2018, the county council allocated $195 million of that money for Main and Bohicket roads. And so where we stood then is $195 million. The county's gotten about $40 million more from the State Transportation Infrastructure Bank to work on segment A. So there's about $235 million available. The last estimate we heard was about $131 million for segment A. So that leaves about $100 million available to work on segments B and C. And I think we can do a lot with $100 million. And the key thing here is that we need to make sure these funds are actually spent on B and C. We don't want them to use half the funds and then use half the funds someplace else. We want to make sure they use all these funds on segment B and C. I'm always amazed when we talk with folks and we go out there in the community, how many people do not know that they're working on segment A, if you will, the Main and 17 flyover. As you can see, that there's a lot of stuff going on. The county has told us they expect to go out the bid in 2022, so next year sometime. Some of the key parts here they're doing is certainly the flyover itself, which is, I think, going to be great improvement in terms of what's there now. Also, there is much better access to the Limehouse landing, which is great with a roundabout here at Chisholm Road. So it's progressing. And literally, I think only about 10% of the people on the island actually know they're doing anything, because you're constantly getting these questions from folks. In terms of segment C, hopefully you're familiar with this picture over here on the right. These are the county's 5 alternatives. And in the last several months, the county has gone back and they've started refining those alternatives. One of the things they've told us is that they have eliminated River Road as one of the alternatives. They said it was too destructive to the number of homes that it would impact. So they're now down to 4 alternatives. And they're also evaluating the alternatives that we're going to talk about here, alternative 6, as well as the town of Kiowa has proposed an alternative 2. So they're looking at all those alternatives as they go forward. And out of all that, they're going to come back in about March timeframe and have a public meeting. So that's the current status of that. You know, the segment B, what we've been told is fundamentally they're not going to work on it because from their perspective, it's not needed once the Mark Clark extension is built. And as you can see in these diagrams, I mean, whether it's the bike ped path for children walking between the Dunmovin subdivision over to St. John's High School, or it's, you know, trying to get out on Chisholm Road, or the collisions and fatalities on Main Road, or even the 2040 projected congestion on Main. All of this shows that there's actually a need to improve Main Road as well as Bohicket Road. And then this goes back to the first slide about funding. What we're concerned here is if all this effort is not done as it needs to be done, then those allocated funds may go someplace else. So we want to make sure those funds are spent where they're needed. So the issues we had with what the county was doing is fundamentally it's too destructive. I think they saw that on River Road, and the other alternatives pretty much are right behind that in terms of the amount of destruction. And one of the approaches they take is we're going to build a road and then we'll figure out what happens to the community later. And so our approach is just the opposite of that. We bring the community to the environment first and then figure out how to build an effective road at that point in time. The county started off with, we're going to build a 4 and 5 lane road. Where should we put it? And our approach really is, well, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And as we looked at the data, we saw that the real issues are not along the long straightaways, but the curves and intersections. So from our perspective, as we look at the data, we don't need to put 4 and 5 lanes really everywhere. We just need to address the problems where they are. And then we touched on this in the very first slide about the arbitrary segmentation of Main and Bohicket. It really needs to be looked at holistically, and specifically the Marianne Point to Edenville section, which is the most dangerous, both from the standpoint of cars and pedestrian safety. Really, that's the key part that needs to be worked on. And finally, the approach that we're taking with our consultants is really what we call a modern design approach. They really are looking at it in context. They're looking at networks of roads and roundabouts. So really a different approach than just this, we call a monolithic approach where everything has to be bulldozed 4 and 5 lanes from point A to point B. So I just wanted to touch briefly on if you don't know all this, what's happening in the corridor. We talked about the main road segment A, which is going on, which is great. You've probably, if you go up Main Road at all, you've seen this Sea Island Preserve, and I'm still trying to find the preserve there. There's about 400 houses at Marianne Point, and Marianne Point is the deadliest stretch of road on the island, and they're going to put 400 houses right there. The other thing is Grace Landing with 76 houses right between far past St. John's High School. And I'm still trying to find the landing on that because it actually doesn't touch the water at all. And then on the southern part of the island, there's a bunch going on, all of it, in the developmental or conceptual stage. There's what they're calling a wellness center just north of the Kiowa Town Hall. It's got actually it's proposed to have more square footage than all of Freshfields, to give you an idea of the scope of it. You may remember the putt-putt, which was withdrawn, but we never can tell if it's going to come back again. Again, in terms of the context of that road, what's needed there. There was something recently behind Freshfields where a developer wanted to put 500 houses plus 160,000 square feet of commercial. The developer has gone back and is rethinking that because a lot of the folks from Kiowa were against it, which was really great. And something really recent that happened is, if you're familiar with Kiowa River, where they've got something like 1,200 houses or so, they've requested that all those houses can have short-term rentals. So instead of a house that someone lives in, a month of the year, or maybe there's some retired folks, we're now going to have houses that have short-term rentals with 4 or 5 cars at them and so forth, which will greatly impact the amount of traffic on that area of the island. So we mentioned context-based, and what's context-based? I kind of put together this collage. Yeah, as you can see, it's to me, when I started picking out some of these pictures, my blood pressure kind of went down because I felt like I was on the island as opposed to perhaps on Maybank Highway or something of that nature. To me, this is what we're talking about in terms of the context. The roads have to be in the context of the fact that, the salt marshes, the rural roads, the history, the homes, whatever it might be. And so this is more difficult for the county to quantify, but this is really what makes the difference, what makes Johns Island, Johns Island. So I wanted to touch on a couple of things. I'm not sure how familiar you are with some of these. We'll send out this presentation afterwards, and these all have hyperlinks, so you can go in and see more detail about some of them. But if you don't know about the urban growth boundary, it's probably the most important thing to know about on Johns Island when it comes to land development and hence traffic. What's called inside the urban growth boundary, closer to downtown, it's designated to be urban, and outside the urban growth boundary, closer to Wadmalaw, if you will, it's designated to be rural. And you can really see how that is. You can see all these small roads in this area, whereas down here you see the farm fields and so forth. And inside the urban growth boundary is only about 20% of the island, yet most people, especially people along Maybank and people off island, I think view Johns Island as this area. And of course, the road we're talking about is all the way through here, which is almost exclusively outside the urban growth boundary. And the part that is inside the urban growth boundary is this area right here, which is in the city. And you may or may not know, there's a couple of plans that the city has, the Johns Island Community Plan and the Johns Island Community Greenways Plan, both of which, if you haven't read them, again, there's hyperlinks here for you. If you haven't read them, they're great reads. And we pretty much have followed what the vision for the city is within its city limits, within the urban growth boundary here. Whereas I think pretty much the county has simply ignored them. And when we met with Mayor Tecklenburg and his staff the other day, he was really enthused about what we were trying to accomplish in terms of trying to implement these plans that have been out there for a while. Just touch briefly on a couple topics. I know they're tangential, but they're really not, because this is the zoning outside the urban growth boundary. And zoning drives traffic. If you got higher density, you've got higher traffic, and changes the zoning drive, or increase in traffic drives zoning, because there's a desire to have more density when that happens. And just to kind of give you an idea, I don't think most people have kind of seen this type of thing, but this brownish is 1 house per 3 acres, which is close in. This AGR, which is the light green, is 1 house per acre. And the darker green, or more vibrant green, is 1 house per 8 acres. And the blue is planned developments. So you can see the vast majority of outside the urban growth boundary is either 1 house per acre, 1 house per 3 acres, or 1 house per 8 acres. So when folks keep saying that, oh, Johns Island is going to get built out, what they're thinking is that the densities inside the urban growth boundary are going to be extended all the way across the island, which is not the case as long as we're diligent in maintaining the zoning and the urban growth boundary. Just wanted to point out a couple of planned developments. The biggest one down in the southern part of the island is Kiowa River with 1,200 houses, and that's where I mentioned they want to allow all those houses to have short-term rentals. There's other ones along that road, but most of it is going to be, as you can see, AG8 all the way through here. So the densities are not going to be that high. And a lot of these properties will never be developed because some of them are under conservation easements, or the homeowners eventually want them to be under conservation easements. Again, if you got any questions, give me a yell. The other thing that's important to know relative to traffic is that where you can get the sewer, because sewer service equals development equals traffic. And fundamentally, there is a sewer boundary which pretty much corresponds to the urban growth boundary with a few exceptions. So again, high density developments are not going to occur outside the urban growth boundary as long as that sewer boundary is maintained. And to give you an idea, this is that property, that Sea Island Preserve right here, that it has something like 400 houses. But if it had sewer and it was inside the urban growth boundary and annexed to the city, it would have a heck of a lot more than that. So what have we been up to? Well, we've been up to having a lot of meetings. You can see on the list over here on the right, we've met with pretty much anywhere from the county to the city to the towns to the state. But the key meetings really are meeting with the county council folks. All of these meetings have been extremely productive, and we really appreciate the fact that the folks have given us the time to talk with them. We've actually done a fair amount of work working with the county staff to redefine alternative 6, or refine it rather. We brought in the alternative, we had discussions with them, and they came back and said, well, what about maybe you change this or that? And we went back and forth on it. And I think we had some great conversations. We've had several in-person events after we put out alternative 6. A lot of outreach relative to emails, and hopefully that's how you found us, Facebook or web page. And then we also had some fundraising efforts to pay for our consultants. So the issues that the approach that we're taking, and these are to the technical issues, because again, I can't stress enough that having a technical solution is key, but in no way sufficient. We need a solution. We don't want to just say no. We want to have something that we can show the county that works, that's effective, that's not destructive. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to interact with county council to ensure that this is implemented. So we're initially concentrated on Main and Bohicket roads. We've had people ask, well, why don't you work on River Road? Why don't you work on Maybank? And the obvious answer is because that's where the money is. The county has allocated the money we talked about before. There's about $100 million left to work on Main and Maybank. So that's where we want to make sure it gets spent. The county only had segment C, but we really believe segment B needs to be included in that effort because that's where most of the congestion and safety issues are. And then really, we're talking about using data to determine where the roads need to be fixed. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. When you talk with people, invariably the worst road in the island is the road they travel every day. That may not be the worst road in the island, but to them, it's the worst road in the island. And so as we start talking to them and showing them the data that shows where the traffic volumes are, where the accidents are, where the fatalities are, they start opening their eyes a little bit and say, oh, well, I didn't realize that part of the road was worse than my part of the road. So we're not trying to say all the roads shouldn't be fixed, but we really do need to figure out which roads we need to fix. Talked about the context-based approach here. I don't think anybody wants a Sam Rittenberg type road on the island, but that's pretty much what the county is proposing, especially around Maybank intersection. It needs to be in the context of what Johns Island looks like. And again, we talked about this modern design techniques. Rather than this monolithic approach of 4 to 5 lanes from point A to point B, we're talking about really starting with the town, the island itself, the people, the culture, the environment, and then saying, okay, how do we fit a road into that? And we have solutions that do and are effective. So real simple. We want to increase safety, reduce congestion, increase mobility, and enhance the cultural environment of our island. And we believe we can do an and we have solutions that are and, as opposed to an or solution where you either have to do one or the other. So what is alternative 6? Hopefully you've seen some of the materials that we sent out. There's the 3 segments. From our perspective, there's 3 segments. There's this area up here, Main, North Marianne Point, needs to be some, turnout lanes, some roundabouts, especially at Marianne Point, increased signage. I bet you most folks don't even know what the speed limits are on most of these roads because there's a speed limit sign maybe once every 5 miles or something. Pullouts. We talked with Sheriff Graziano, and we asked her why there wasn't more enforcement of speeding on these roads, and she said there's no safe place for my officers to park or for them to pull somebody off. So little things like pullouts. Pretty much down in the southern part, the same things, minor improvements down here. One of the key things we don't want to do, there's a long standing community right along the road down here. We want to make sure we don't destroy that community. We want to actually try to enhance that community. In the main section here between Marianne Point and Edenvale, there's a lot more activity, especially around the intersection here, because I think everybody knows intuitively, and they've seen it in their commutes, that that's where all the congestion is. The congestion isn't, along this stretch of road here or along this stretch of road here. The congestion is here. What you do have is backups from someone making a left-hand turn, and so we're addressing that. So a lot of this things being done in this area. And the next slide shows it in more detail. But before we get to that, I want to put this a little bit further on, so there'll be more time for questions there. So we'll come back to this one. But again, it shows you that most of the effort is in this area here. And so the comments we've gotten from the county is, we can't include segment B because the county council directed us not to. But it was an arbitrary segmentation, and we believe that county council really needs to reevaluate that. And staff also believes that there's no reason to do segment B because all the problems will be eliminated with when the Mark Clark extension is implemented. And of course, you saw those pictures in terms of kids walking along the street with no shoulder. You saw the exit to Chisholm Road. You saw Marianne Point with all the fatalities there. None of these problems will be solved, regardless of if Mark Clark extension is done or not. So that's why this needs to be done now. And believe it or not, improving safety is not an objective of this project. They call it purpose and need. When we pushed back on that, they basically said, no, well, it's not the objective. Our objective is to increase capacity. And so we believe that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. The other thing the county has said is, if you want to make those improvements on Main, you can just apply for other funds, and you'll compete against other projects, and we'll see if we'll eventually do them. And our point is, no, we're sorry, but all that money from the half-cent sales tax allocated to Main Road Corridor was supposed to be spent here, and the monies can be spent here and should be spent here. We shouldn't have to go out and find funds other places. So as I keep mentioning, these are all technical issues we need to address, but really, at the end of the day, they're political issues. So before I get into actually your questions and comments, I wanted to show you some of the questions that we've constantly heard. Of course, one of them is, they need to do something about segment A, about Main Road and 17, and of course they are. Folks say that, Main, Bohicket, and River all need to be 5-lane the entire way. And of course, as you look at the data, the congestion data, the safety data, it doesn't say that. It says you really need to do them. You need to really improve the intersections and curves. I mentioned before that lower Bohicket, this area down here, is extremely unsafe, people think. But if you start looking up here, you'll see all the red, which on these heat maps, the redder it is, the worse it is. So that's actually where it really needs to be prioritized to work in those areas. People say, well, they need to enforce speed limits, and I told you that there's a reason they don't. There's no place to turn out. And everybody, I heard a lot of people say we need to work on whichever road first. I often hear we need to work on Upper River Road. There's no shoulder there. We need to work on, Maybank first. Again, the reason we're not talking about that right now is because the funding is in place and allocated already for Main and Bohicket roads. And then finally, there's this constant thing that we need a faster way to get to, and you can fill in the blank, whatever it may be. And, we all enjoy getting places faster, but the question is it worth the destruction of the cultural environment of the island to get there a little faster? So we're not talking about not relieving congestion. Certainly that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, but just to get someplace faster is certainly not what we consider to be one of the objectives. So this is alternative 6, and I'm hoping you all have some questions that we can address. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask them, be my guest.
Hi, this is Jennifer Mills. John, great presentation. I guess my question is, are we making any headway? I mean, I guess I'm a little sad to see there aren't a lot more people on here tonight.
Yeah, we had about 20 people that signed up, and I can't quite right now see how many people are here, but it didn't look as many as I hoped. One of the biggest issues that we have on the island is community engagement. You may be familiar that the city did this municipal improvement district, and they had meetings on the island, and 3 or 4 people would show up, or they'd have Zoom meetings. There'd be 3 or 4 people in the Zoom meetings. So we are trying our best to get out there with our newsletter, with the Facebook page, with these in-person events, with these webinars, trying to engage people. And part of this engagement with folks that do show up is to try to leverage their engagement with them talking with their neighbors, their fellow churchgoers, their fellow civic organization people, so that they can engage them too. So we realize that we need to find a group of people that want to be engaged and try to help them get engaged even more with others. I don't know if that helped you or not.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. What else do we have?
Hi, this is Kat Moore.
Hey, Kat.
I've been one of those people hi. I live downriver on a kind of a big property, older house. So we love our rural nature down here. And we're not part of the city, so we don't get to vote for the mayor. So we don't really get a lot of say in the politics of it all. So I guess I'm trying to educate myself more. And I have to say, I haven't really been as good as I should be about following up with these things, which is part of the reason why I decided to come tonight. Great presentation. So I guess the next question is, what can I do more to help? Like, what do you need? I can't vote for the mayor. I can't vote for council. I can't vote for those things. So what can I do as a county resident, not a city resident, to really help?
Okay, good point. So just be aware that if we look at this entire road on Maybank, Maine, and Bohicket, all the way up here, there's only a small stretch of it that is actually in the city. Almost all of it is in the county, and the funding is from the county sales tax. So the city has, quite frankly, very little to do with this. It's a county issue, and you do get to vote for the county council. And so to answer your question, the thing that you could do the most is 2 things: is engage your fellow residents, but more importantly, engage with the county council. We can send you the emails and the phone numbers. And at some point when we have the public meetings, we need to get, as I call it, butts and seats, right? And then when it goes to the county, we need a lot of butts and seats. When this goes to the county for discussions, we need 200-300 people to show up. And so that's why we need to really leverage each of us to bring 10 people along with us to be able to engage them. But yes, you do vote for the county commissioners, and this is a county project. So engaging with the county is the way to go. Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. What else do we have, guys? You must have some questions. David, I can't see everybody. So just unmute yourself.
John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, just so that you know, I've tried to reach out to Travis Benintendo, the principal of Hot Gap. My son's an 8th grader there at Hot Gap Elementary or middle school, and I can't get him to respond back to me. I sent him a long email and I explained that possibly Rational Roads could have a positive impact on the parents entering and exiting the school. When I take my son there in the morning, it's like scary trying to leave there, trying to pull out and make a left on Bohicket Road. And so I'm not sure. I've looked at everything that you've done, but I guess I want to say that I haven't got any positive feedback from him. I'm a resident. My wife and I, we live in the villages of St. John's or St. John's Woods. And I know there's some issues there, but you said that, like with Stringfellow Court, some of those feeder roads that they talk about doing parallel roads. Right. And I've tried to get a little bit of interest through my neighborhood. Some of my neighborhood council people, I guess you'd say, they've tried to pass on some of your emails to the members of our neighborhood. So I'm hoping you're getting some. I guess it's sort of disappointing to see how many people attended this meeting. Although I will say I didn't know about this meeting. I was invited at about 7:10 by Alexis Rashford.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah, she texted me and said, "Get your butt on the meeting."
There you go.
So
I like.
that's what.
She's good at
So
that.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Alexis has got a pretty strong personality.
Yeah, I know she does. That's why we have her on our steering committee. So a couple of things, David. One is that we found the schools have been reluctant to engage on issues like the roads because A, they think they're divisive, and B, I think that's really the purview of the school security officer, and they want to kind of keep hands off, which is unfortunate because, as you say, the schools the 3 schools are huge traffic generators, right? And to not focus on those as the 3 areas where you really need to have solutions is the wrong way to go, right? It's at least from our perspective. And you did mention some of those parallel roads along Maybank. Again, we're not addressing those simply because the money is to be spent on Main and Bohicket. There's a lot of improvements that need to be done on the other roads of the island. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to make sure that this money doesn't leave this part of the island.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to throw something out there for this discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you. What else? I'm gonna start calling. Al, I see you down there at the bottom of my picture. You got any questions?
No, I just signed on as well, a little bit late.
Okay.
Had trouble finding the email, so my wife found it just a minute ago. So,
well, did you have any questions before you signed in?
I don't have any questions. No, I spoke with someone a few days ago. I forgot who called me. I was on my way to Jacksonville for a trip, and I just got back a couple hours ago. But yeah, I mean it's an overwhelming task. I mean we're fighting a giant pile of money here, and we're gonna have to, in my opinion, figure out. I think it was David was just talking about trying to generate some interest in his neighborhood. We're going to need a lot of voices to move the needle here. So that's a little bit about what I've been thinking about and how we get that done. Because a half a dozen or a dozen and a half people are going to have a very hard time moving this. So how do we generate interest at a level to get people to show up to meetings, to get people to make the phone calls, write the letters, and do the things that it's going to take to get this, if nothing else, slow it down. We bought in June, and it's just unbelievable to me how much it's changed since June. Now, obviously, a lot of that stuff's been in the works longer than that, but yeah, I mean, how do you get in front of this? So
whereabouts do you live, Al?
We're on plow ground.
Okay, what part of plow ground?
We bought the old Charles Hill farm.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it, but it's
so it's probably a half a mile off of Bohicket on the right. So
okay,
about 12 acres.
Okay.
So
nice place to be.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah. Well, one of the alternatives is the 5-lane plow ground.
Yeah.
And if you look at the traffic volume on plow ground, ignoring the stop signs at either end, does plow ground ever have a lot of congestion on it?
No.
Yeah.
Not that I've seen, and we like it that way.
Yeah, and yet they want to put 5 lanes there, and that's part of our issue is that if traffic backs up on plow ground at River Road, then let's address the River Road intersection. We don't need to put 4 or 5 lanes all the way down plow ground and take 100 feet of your front yard out.
Yeah.
John.
Sorry, there's a huge development going in plow ground. Is that correct? Didn't they start? The
Wooddale development there pretty much have plow ground and river.
Okay, is that why they want to do the 5 roads, or is that more to make plow ground a thoroughfare?
That's to make plow ground a thoroughfare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because that traffic would really be mainly associated with, river going north, not really much on plow ground.
Got it.
It's
Got
very
it.
end of plow ground.
Sorry. Sorry,
So-
my dogs are barking.
Those are the kind of questions we're here to answer.
Yeah, so I'm unaware of the development she's talking about. I'm assuming it's that couple hundred acres there on the corner, which is currently sunflowers and
No, it's not quite on the corner, but it's before you get to the corner on the right as you go towards River Road.
okay.
And it also goes wraps around and goes over to River Road from plow ground.
Okay.
If you want to know more about it, send us an email and we can send you the drawings of what it's going to look like.
Okay, but it's done and approved and all of that.
It's an approved development, but right now they're in stormwater, trying to get through stormwater right now, and they're evidently having some difficulties getting through stormwater.
Okay.
So I have a question about that. So
Sure.
was that area agriculturally zoned before that, or was that always, because that seems outside of the urban development zone?
Yeah, there's a long history associated with that piece of property, so basically that property was outside the urban growth boundary and was agricultural. The city annexed it and moved it. And it's still outside the urban growth boundary, but the city annexed it and gave it their zoning. There's a lot of discussion about why that happened. Let's just say it should never have happened because it is large property outside the urban growth boundary. The city since then has, we talk a lot with the city planning people and even the mayor. They really don't want to go outside the urban growth boundary. They want to basically fill in donut holes and stay within the urban growth boundary. That all happened under a previous regime.
Okay, that's because if that is the case, then what prevents them from doing that all down the island? But
Yes.
It sounds like we have a different philosophy now.
Yeah, well, there's two things. There's a different philosophy, but also the conservation community is trying to, on those large properties, try to engage the landowners so that they put conservation easements on them. And so, so there's two ways you're going to defend your urban growth boundary. One is, butts and seats at county council, and then the other one is, all that can be changed by 5 votes. So what you also need to do is get out there and conserve land. So there's both of those going on at the same time.
John?
Hey, Carl.
Hey, I know I communicated some questions briefly to you by email earlier
Okay.
today, but a couple of these conversations I wanted to chime in on. And nice to meet you, Mr. Dias. That home you're living in had belonged to my grandparents who farmed all of this land. So I'm on the opposite side of the road from you, but just down the road. So.
Oh, nice.
So basically I got a long history with all of this area along Plowground Road and know it pretty well, and actually drive from Plowground out to 17 South to go to work every day during the week. So also
You go to
know
Spring
all
Hill
about
every
that
day?
stretch.
You go
So I'm
It's a
one of
long
those
ride.
people.
Yeah.
So I can speak to a lot of those issues. I also, when I inherited this property that I live on from my grandfather who farmed it, I put it in a conservation easement. So I can also speak to some of that. I wanted to say that, I've got a number of neighbors who are very concerned, on my side here, and what might happen along Plowground. And none of them specifically are here this evening on this. And I'm wondering, what I wanted to talk about too is the possibility of doing like small neighborhood sort of a Zoom conversation. These people keep telling me, Carl, what should we do? What do we, but they're not here. If I specifically call and invite them and say, hey, we're going to do this on such and such a day, might be a way to do that.
Yeah, and definitely that is one of the things in terms of reaching out. We actually hope everyone here reaches out to their HOA, to their church or whatever, and comes back to us and says, hey, you know, I don't feel comfortable talking all these details. You know them better. Would you come either in person or via Zoom? We would love to do that. I mean, we can go to a low tide and do it all at the table low tide, or we can do it in somebody's barn, or we can do it by Zoom. It doesn't matter. We definitely want to have those type of meetings with the community, especially those focus communities, like you know, just folks on plow grounds. We have a better idea what the issues are.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that was mentioned, you know, the conservation easements and the zoning and that sort of thing. I'm a little frustrated about, I have to say, on the zoning side of things, because it seems like if you've got the right political pull, it doesn't matter what the zoning is, you still get the development. I mean, we've got houses along on the lower side of plow ground right now that must not be on an acre of land. I mean, and I think you had
no
it shown
way.
on the zoning map as pretty, you know, as what, 3 or 8 acres or something like that. And it's got to be less than that.
Well, so there's a couple of things here. There's a difference between the density and the lot sizes. In other words, if in this AG8 area, 1 house per 8 acres,
Right.
you could maybe cluster all those houses in a small portion of that 8 acres. So the lots themselves could be smaller, but the overall density in that, what's called a parent lot, still has to be maintained at whatever number that is. You know, if you're along here someplace, right, which is 1 house per 3 acres.
Correct. Of course,
Okay.
because of my conservation easement, it's more like 1 house for 20 acres, but.
Right. But I mean, you're talking about your neighbors and so forth, and it's 1 house, AG8 is 1 house per 8 acres. You know, you and I did trade emails. I definitely will want to set up a Zoom with you tomorrow and kind of focus in on this area and then talk about how we can engage with folks. But the reality is, in the last several years, the county has been pretty good about not, if you will, upzoning things. There's not a lot that's happened. Now, you may be aware that about a year ago, the county was updating their zoning ordinances, which they call the ZLDR. And they were going to basically try to upzone everything outside most of the things outside here by a factor of 2, increase the density by a factor of 2. The community got together and they stopped it. So unfortunately, I know a lot of successes only because I've not been here long enough. Okay. The other thing we mentioned is that putt-putt that you maybe remember that was going to be put down here. They stopped that. So there are several things here in the last several years that the community got together and stopped. Another thing, another big win is there's property right in here, Oakville, which is extremely low-lying land. And the conservation community got together and teamed with the airport authority, and the airport authority bought that land, and they're going to put a conservation easement on it. That took out, I forget the number. I don't know, it's like 400 houses, 400 houses are off the you know, the slate now. So those are all wins, whether it's not increasing densities by a factor of 2, putting this under conservation easement, you know, stopping a putt-putt that doesn't belong in this rural road. These are all actual wins that we've had, and we've been able to do them by engagement by folks like you, and getting out there and you know, talking with council people and getting butts in seats. So there have been some good wins.
So do you think from your experience that having a conservation easement on the property does make some difference?
I think it makes a huge difference. Now, let's be clear, the eminent domain trumps a conservation easement, okay?
Right.
But from the standpoint of, let's just use as an example, if this big chunk of land here, which is AG8, and for the, I don't know how many acres, let's just say they could have 100 houses on it. But if they put a conservation easement and only allowed 5 houses on it, that'd be a huge win in my mind, in terms of the number of cars that don't have to go down here, the amount of, you know, traffic and congestion and so forth. Now, should there be, you know, 100 houses in this area? Yep, that's the urban area of the town. We should make sure the infrastructure supports it, but it shouldn't be out here. So no, I think the conservation easements make a huge difference. And like I said, the conservation easement up here north of the airport, we took out like 300 or 400 houses, never be built.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening there.
So that where where it's RR butts up against AG8, is that plow ground?
This is plow ground right here, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, the reason I did this, and I'm glad you guys are asking questions about this, is because again, everybody thinks that these huge densities inside the urban growth boundary are applicable through the entire island, and it's not. Now, again, it takes diligence from all of us to make sure that doesn't happen, which is the reason we're trying to engage people. And the reason I've got this land use stuff in a transportation presentation, because they're so intertwined.
Absolutely.
Think about taking those 300 or 400 houses out here, what that means in terms of reduced traffic on this road.
So John,
Yes, Judy.
so I'm rather new, well, not so new to the island anymore, but I still think of myself as a, newcomer. I've been here since 2017. And having joined the committee, I'm really seeing a lot of the interconnection of the people here. But I do think that the island itself sometimes feels so large and so diverse that we don't always know how to connect with our neighbors and how to connect with all of the things that need to be addressed. But I do agree with John that things do get accomplished when people want to do it. And before I was ever here, apparently that was addressed with Angel Oak and people all coming together and deciding that that needed to be protected. And over 1,000 people or so got together and really, and that was much more rural then. So not all of these people were here then. And I think that that's really what we have to do. And if we can do that with this road, we can accomplish all sorts of other things also with the zonings and with the rural feel of the island. And I think a lot of us, even as a newcomer, I want the island to be a certain way. I don't want it to have these giant roads through it. It saddens me when I drive on what you were talking about, Glen McConnell, and I was just on it today, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want that on our island, and I think there's a lot to be done and a lot to be said for what we're doing now, and we all just have to keep at it. So I'm done with my speech.
And I was going to say another thing to Carl's point, is it make any difference? This is Hoopstick Island, and not, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, someone wanted to change it from 10 houses to a whole bunch of cabins and basically make it an adult campsite, and there'd be hundreds of people here going across that little causeway over there, adding to the traffic there, and that was also shot down. And so again, there's maybe we should be much more vocal about the wins, right? Because they're actually the biggest losses in my mind, I'll be honest with you, are this property here, that it wasn't conserved, and there wasn't much politically. There wasn't much that could be done over in this area. Lee,
Sorry.
I saw your mouth moving.
No, I know. I was pushing on the mute. I think that's a really actually excellent point, because I know I used to live in the Villages in St. John's First, so I've been still a very newcomer because we moved over, I think, in 2013. And then we moved downriver. But I do feel like since I moved on the island, I've peripherally gotten involved with some of these things, but I've always felt that it was just hopeless. Because we always, I just felt like there was no hope. It was just, it's going to happen. So I do think focusing on the wins, like listening to you guys, actually does give me some hope that there really are real solutions, and that, it is possible, which I think also helps people get involved. Because so I do think focusing on the wins is a great idea, and, something that, that actually inspires me a lot too. So not knowing what you guys have done or what has been done by others to help prevent some of these things, which I think, and I agree, like, I understand the urban development, people have to move somewhere. There is going to be building, it's going to be happening. I'm not somebody who's moved over here and then wants to be like, nobody else come.
Yeah, right.
I get that. I just feel like it could be well done.
Right.
And so, anyway, so that's it. I just think that's a really good idea.
That's kind of the whole concept of urban and rural. We don't have to choose. We can do both, right? We can make sure we've got urban developments in here. We can have a bus service down Maybank Highway to support people. We can do all kinds of things that make sense in the urban environment, but that doesn't mean we have to put a 5-lane road here when it's not needed. And that's fundamentally our point. Yeah, so I think I need to put a slide here to just say what our wins have been. So it's obvious that that happens. Now there have been losses off island, but I'm trying to think. I don't really know of in the last several years where there's been a real loss on island. So we're trying. We're trying.
What is the project? Is PUD stands for Program Under Development? When you had the big map,
Yeah.
what does it stand for?
It's they either call it PD or PUD. It's a planned development or planned unit development. And
Okay.
basically it's specific, I'm going to try to find it here. It's specific zoning for those parcels.
And what's the 281 house down right before you get to Betsy Carrison?
That's
down,
what's called,
yeah, that. What is
it's called Orange Hill. It's owned by
Okay.
the same folks that or the Kiowa Associates own that piece of property. They currently
Okay.
use it as a hunting club.
Okay.
If you live in that area at all, you might hear the shotguns go off sometimes.
Well, I live actually not super far, but I think there's a different hunting club behind my house, but yeah, that's interesting. So what are they're doing houses there?
No, they are not doing anything right now. They're using it as a hunting club. They're sitting on it at this point in time. Just because you have a planned development doesn't mean you actually have to do anything. I mean, for example, the Hoopstick Island here, I don't know how long it's been planned development, but it's been a while, and people have sold it and resold it and tried to do other things with it, but it's still sitting there undeveloped.
So that hunting club you're referring to there, that's the big double wide gate down there that you see?
It may be, I don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah. It's part of it's like I said, it's part of Kiowa Associates properties.
Okay.
And of course, this is Kiowa River Development, and this right here is Kiowa River Estates.
Okay.
And those are all the same. Kiowa Associates have all of that as well.
No, not at all.
Okay.
This is Beach Company down here.
Okay.
And I don't know about Kiowa River Estates. It's been there for quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the island, I think you'll see like the Beach Company, John Darby with the Beach Company. You'll see Kiowa Associates. You also see Bill Goodwin, who also works in Kiowa. Those are kind of three large developers, as opposed to, let's say, the Lennars or Pulte's of the world.
Yeah, my understanding that River Estates was purchased multiple decades ago and just left alone till they decided to start working on it.
Yeah, I don't know when they actually bought it from. They bought it from Side-Eye, one of in his family.
Yeah.
I don't know when that actually occurred.
Do you know, you had mentioned the Sea Island Preserve, which you were still searching for the preserve, which I agree with you. I forget which direction it is on Main. There's like another section that looks like it's being developed, but it doesn't have a sign. Is that the same thing, or is that something else?
Yeah, it's actually the same thing. If you see my pointer here, the main part of Sea Island Preserve is in this area, and because there's a bunch of wetlands right through here, they have a second entrance here. But they don't connect. The two of those, they only connect, I think, by a trail, not by roads, because of the wetlands.
That's probably what they think is a preserve.
Well, that's exactly what it is. They preserve the wetlands, which they couldn't develop anyway.
Also, they're widening, or they're putting things on the side of it, and it's almost like that part of Maine is becoming a piecemeal development that, without a plan, we're not sure what we'll end up with.
You're talking about the road itself?
Yes.
Yeah, they're putting a turn lane in there, and along that line, Judy, this is the deadliest curve on the island, or deadliest section of road on the island right here, and the entrance is just off of that. So we think that's going to actually cause more problems. And that's, for example, where we said there should be a roundabout here with an entrance into the development right? And an entrance off of Mary Ann Point, because it's tough on Mary Ann Point to see around the curve here. So putting a roundabout there solves all kind of problems and gives easy ingress and egress to the Sea Island Preserve. But that's only if you look at it holistically. Otherwise, you just put a left-hand turn lane in and don't worry about it.
Can you
Right.
point to Maybank for me? I'm just trying to get perspective on this.
Maybank is right here.
Okay. Yep. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. So what we're talking about is, we talked about it. Reach out to your neighbors, try to engage them, reach out to HOAs, churches, civic organizations, like Carl was talking about. We're glad to come and either through a Zoom, in person, try to engage them, because we understand it's all about engagement. We need engagement. Also, we've got in-person events. We're going to have more next year. But we frankly don't have enough of people to man them. We were at Hebrew Zion Church about a month ago. And I think we had about 6 or 7 people there, and it wasn't enough because there were so many people that came. We really weren't able to give attention to those folks. So we really need people to help us. We look forward to that. We talked about reaching out to the council. Here's what we think the message should be. Again, we'll send this document to everybody that signed up for the meeting. In these zoning issues, we need people to engage in these zoning issues. And I will put a little thing at the end here. We're having to hire consultants. If you want to contact us, we'd love to get a donation too. But if not, that's fine too. It's most important to try to engage people and engage the county council.
So are they consultants or lobbyists or
They're
both?
consultants. They're engineers.
Okay,
You and I are the lobbyists, Al.
got it. How expensive are the consultants?
Pretty expensive, measured in tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
And so we've collected monies to date to pay them to date, but we need more monies going forward because, like I said, this is going to be a 6-month-year continuation of this whole process.
How much is it to get one of those signs so I can put it at the end of my driveway?
Free.
We just send us an email and we'll get you one.
Okay.
Actually, I was thinking about that too today. Maybe even though it seems a little bit premature to start the Alt-6 signs, we have them. If you want them, if you want your neighbors to have them, just let us know. We're ready to, blitz the island with them if we want. We were thinking originally that it was all come up to county in December, and now it's like March maybe. So it's feels a little bit too soon to put the signs, but if we can put them out because we have them, and I don't want them to go to waste. So if you want a sign, let us know. Or
just tell us,
Well,
and we'll
and
figure out how to get a hold of it.
I mean, at least for me, I saw one before we went to the low tide event, and it spurred curiosity as to what it was about. So I think there's an argument to let them be out.
Okay.
Give us, like I said, contact us, and we'll make sure we get it to you one way or the other.
Yeah, we've got one, but we need some more.
We have plenty of them.
Okay.
They're cheaper by the 100.
Which is what we kind of did. So let's get them out there.
Yeah. So we'd love if you get back with us. If you want signs, if you want us to present to somebody else, whatever it might be, we love you to get engaged any way you can. Well, we really appreciate you guys being with us today.